Right. Anyway, welcome everybody to another episode on Saturday night as we talk to um, DOBBS. And this time I'm very privileged to have two of my friends, my colleagues, my classmates, who are very interesting people because they are into something which some of you might be interested in or interested to start in, and that is photography. And I'm very happy to say they are excellent photographers. I'm very envious. I have a camera, but I can't take as good pictures as they can. So uh, I'd like to introduce Teh Ban Hup, no
Hello.
relation of mine, also Teh and Amar Singh, both my good friends I've known many, many years. Okay. So I thought we would do something different, something non-medical for a change. Our first live interview talk session was on medical indemnity, but this time I thought we'd talk about something non-medical and a hobby which many of you would be keen on. Keen to know. So I'll start with Ban Hup. Ban Hup, maybe you can introduce yourself and tell our viewers how you started with photography, what inspired you.
Okay. First of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Um, Now, to the question, I started photography simply because I just wanted to document my growing family at the time in the late 1980s. I think my firstborn. Never got inspired to take photos after that because at the time I was being trained to become a pediatrician, and at the time there were no social media, so we don't have a chance to see other people's work. Then the landscape changed a little bit when digital cameras became affordable. That's when I bought my first digital camera. I still have it. A compact zoom, cost me about 3,000 ringgit, 4.3 megapixels. Still work like a charm, very good.
Wow.
Um, then about a year later, my eldest daughter wanted a camera. So I gave her this camera and went to the shop to buy a replacement. And to my pleasant surprise, with the same budget, I could actually get a digital SLR. Right? At that time, most people would buy either Canon or Nikon. I don't know anything about cameras, so I just went there to the shop and said, "Show me a Canon and a Nikon, entry level, of course." Um, I held out the camera. One is smaller than the other, so I held out the camera, and I found that the Nikon's grip is bigger. Right? At that time, I have the misconception that a bigger grip means more professional. So that's when I bought the Nikon. So I used Nikon for a while. Very, very good camera. Then during one of the trips, I went to Myanmar. Actually, I went to Myanmar. In the middle of the trip, I found that camera system is actually very heavy. I normally when I travel, I bring all my gear. I bring my camera, all my lenses, sometimes even flashes. So that trip, I actually developed a backache, and that was the catalyst for me to change to a lighter system. I started to look out for a lighter camera system. Uh, Olympus came. I bought it. Didn't like it. Didn't like the image quality, so I sold it after a couple of months. Then Fuji came out with the X Pro 1. So I look at the camera, like the looks, very, very retro looking, like the stone, the skin tone that I can get from the camera, because I do mainly portraiture, and skin tone is very important. And I love the electronic viewfinder, like the exposure compensation dial. You can see exposure real time. So I bought that camera, and after that, the rest is history. XT1 came, I bought it. XT2 came, XT3 came. I even have this medium format Fuji camera.
Okay.
Um,
Then quite a collection. How about you, Amar? Maybe we'll move on to Amar. How did
yeah.
you start off in photography?
Hi everyone, good to have you
I
here
think
with us.
everybody knows Dr. Amar, famous
Yeah,
pediatrician from Ipoh.
thank you.
Incidentally, another pediatrician, something about pediatricians and photography, I don't know. But I usually thought it was
Both start with P.
dermatologists doing photography. Pediatricians seem to be the
Well,
leaders here.
Contrary to what Alan says, I don't really view myself as a photographer. I just enjoy nature very much. I got into photography very early because of the postgraduate work I was doing, especially to the MRCP CHN's MRCP work. So I needed a camera to, take pictures of X-rays, of skin lesions, of children with syndromes, and so on. And much of my work at that time was slides. So I bought DSLRs and I put in slide film, which is something you cannot really, waste too much of. You shoot the shot, you shoot the shot. And so that went on for quite some time. I did some nature work as well, but nature work with slides is not really appreciated by many individuals, although you can use it to show when you're doing some teaching. But when digital came out, I think, like Ban Hup, it changed me completely. I've been watching birds for more than 45 years and very inspired by nature. And so digital allowed me to explore that without, the kind of expense that comes with the film category. And I bought secondhand at first, not sure whether I would pursue this. Although I was watching birds and documenting work, I wasn't sure I would get into photography. But increasingly, you need to actually document what you're seeing, the behavior, and you also want to share some of the beauty of what you're seeing. So I bought secondhand Tamron lens with a Nikon body, and unlike Ban Hup, I've stayed with the Nikon all this time, and I progressed through about 7 DSLRs and lots of long lenses over time. But I've also evolved. Besides doing bird photography, which I use a lot to share images, I published a couple of books. I've got images in about 20 international books as well, because people want birds in different situations and different behaviors. I've also explored some macro photography, and I have a lens for macro photography. I also do some night sky photography as well. And I also like to do basic nature. And as a pediatrician, of course, I image children quite a bit if I get a chance. And a long lens is quite nice because children don't really, know that you're imaging at that time. Currently, I'm also looking at UV photography. It's very nice for macro, and I'm looking at how to explore UV photography for birds because birds look different under UV photography, and sexes sometimes can be differentiated by UV photography. So that's where I am right now, doing a lot of photography.
Wow. Okay, so
Did you manage to convert your camera to UV camera?
No, right now I'm using a special startup company which produces very high-end UV lights which you can use to shine. I haven't done the second thing, but I am thinking of damaging one of my camera and long lens, but not to be completely UV capable. Yes.
Okay. Hey, great. For those who haven't seen your work, I just said Amar does fantastic bird photography, and Ban Hup is more into like portrait and scenery. So their styles and interests are very different. So I think people want to can we start off with you guys sharing your favorite work first. Then I think what next we'll move on to maybe some tips for beginners, and maybe something about tips for photography, tips on equipment, and tips on post processing. But I think you guys have fantastic work, and I think maybe we'd like to start off with Ban Hup. Maybe you'd like to share your favorite pictures and just tell us some background about your pictures to see we can.
Like Amar, like Amar, we have problem looking for favorite photos.
So I said restrict you guys to 10 or so, so otherwise we'll overshoot our time.
Okay, let me go to that. Okay, share.
It's not in the share yet. Let's see.
Can you see? You can see it?
Yeah. Okay. I'll add in and I will maximize it so that will be the only thing showing in the screen. Okay. All yours, Ban Hup. Tell us what your favorite work is.
What I'll do is I will share photos from different countries. Now this shot was taken in 2008 during Chinese New Year. Actually, my niece. I was still practicing photography, so my relatives are all my guinea pigs. Now this has to be my favorite because it's very popular in Flickr. Someone actually plagiarized my work, used this photograph to take part in the competition, and won the competition. Now, at the time, I do a lot of type portraits because I just like to play with Photoshop. Doing type portraits is very challenging when you do Photoshop, right? This one was taken in Myanmar. I love this photo because of the lighting and the subjects. This is not posed. This is actually very natural. Every morning in Myanmar, in this is Bagan. Every morning, these monks will go to the nearby villages to collect alms. And when they walk to this corridor, this is actually one of the temples there. They actually walk outside. I look at this corridor with the fantastic lighting, the backdrop. I requested them to walk through here. That's how I captured this shot. This one also the same place, same village. And looking around, following those monks just now. And I saw this nun standing in the light. I love the lighting here. Look at the long shadows and the backlight. Love this one. This one was taken also in Bagan. I desaturated the background so that to enhance my subjects here. This is post. All right. Okay. This one I want to illustrate because after I'm going to give you a tip when you do photography. You must have a good subject, a very good background, good lighting. This illustrates it. Okay, I've got a very good subject there. Look at his face, lots of stories to tell there. Then the background is dark and nice, and the lighting is fantastic here. This one was taken in Ipoh, okay, biscuit making factory. The ovens are all natural. I love the ray of light being enhanced by the smoke coming from the oven. I have another shot here. Okay. I normally play with light and shadows, as you notice. I only do available light photography. I don't use flash. This is my favorite from Bali. This lady used to sell groundnuts in Uluwatu. We went to her place, took photographs of her. I like this photograph, or many people like this photograph, especially artists. So many artists, hundreds and hundreds of them asked me for permission to draw this photo, to practice, both professionals and beginners. And this photo is actually featured in the video, short film. A collector from New York actually bought this photo. I printed it at I think 2 by 3 feet. That's the print. And I sent it to New York. Now, also Bali. Once again, notice I like to play with light and shadows. This is a wholesale market in Bali that happens every 2 to 3 days, 3 days, I think. I love the lighting. I love the background. It's waited for subjects to walk into the light. That's how I captured this shot. If you can see in the background, can you see that? All right, you cannot see myself here.
You want me to put your...
Sorry, never mind. Sorry, Alan. Playing with light and shadows again. I especially like the shadows here. This is cockfighting in Bali. This is Tonle Sap Siem Reap. Came to this Tonle Sap. The father was actually bathing the child. I asked permission to shoot, take a photograph, and the father stopped bathing the child, and the child started to cry. So I told the father, please carry on. And the minute he poured water over his body, he started to laugh. That's how I captured this shot. This again to illustrate what I mentioned just now. Good subject, good background, good lighting. You get it's a formula for potentially good shot. Now this one was taken at the market. This boy came to this store to buy watermelon for the mother. It was taken at around 11 something in the morning. Lighting was very harsh, and the background, if I took this at eye level, the background was very distracting. So I created the background by asking him to lie down on this watermelon. Same market. Look at the good background, good subject, good lighting coming from the air well on top. I asked the mother permission to take photographs of the son. The son refused to look at me. That's why the mother tried to move his head. This is the curious girl, actually a girl from Sapa, Vietnam, northern Vietnam. Just finished her morning feed. It was at the market. Each time I take a photograph, I show it with permission from the mother, of course. Each time I will ask permission before I take photograph of children. Each time I take a photograph, I'll show it to her. So now, after a few times, he was anticipating to look at the photo. That's how I got this shot. One tip I should mention: when you take type portraits, make sure you have catch lights in the eyes. You notice a catch light here. This one was taken in Xiapu, China. This is post. Right? Xiapu is a village in a town in Fujian province. It's a place with lots of photography opportunities. It's so popular in China that this is basically a photographer's town. Took this shot. This is post, and like I say, even the pigeons apparently was post. They blow whistle, something like that, and make them fly all over the place, and I captured this shot. I like this photo because I love the background, the colors. It looked like a piece of art. Notice that whenever I take photographs, there'll be somebody there. So I do many portraiture. I came to this village, it's an ancient village in China, Fujian. I love the place here, the old furniture, the backdrop, and this lady is actually our guide. So I asked her to stand there for me to take a photograph. Same trip, this one, another ancient village. These two ladies were on the way to this wedding. Before they entered, the friend was trying to beautify her friend's hair. Love the lighting here. Love the subjects. Background. Once again, good subjects, good background, good lighting. Formula for a good shot. Now, same village. The advantage of having a flip screen in your camera. This flip screen. This gentleman didn't know I was taking his photograph. We arranged for a lady to be up there, pretending to take photographs of her. Actually, I was taking photograph of him. That's how I captured this shot. Okay. I think I pass on to Amar. Amar, you share your photos.
Okay. Thanks, Ban Hup. Interesting to see all the lovely children that you image, and you get an occasional bird there in the cockfight, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me try and share mine. So mine application. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I do mainly birds, as Alan said, and I think for birds, what people really want in a really good image, which is not easy to get, is this kind of bokeh background. My subjects don't stay still. They're constantly mobile. You can't tell them what to do. And so it requires a lot of patience, and you got to respect them and develop a friendship. This is a male and female Oriental pied hornbill. The name's always on the slide there for you to look at. The male is the one with the larger headgear. It's called a casque, and you can see the larger one. And the female has got that red love spot on the bill. And the very beautiful eyes and very beautiful eyelashes. And you've got this lovely color at the back, which brings out the birds in front. This was in Sabah. Many people think you need to go to some exotic place to see a bird, but you don't need to. Here's a common iora in my own garden, singing his heart out. He's breeding. His colors have changed, so he's very rich right now. Breeding colors, and he's breeding to tell all the other ioras, this is my territory and don't come near. So I would say practice a lot at home if you're starting out with bird photography, because the birds in your gardens are easier, they know you, and it's easier to image them. Of course, I love to image birds because they're beautiful and there's a lot to see. This group of birds are called the barbettes. That's a red-throated barbet, sometimes called the gaudy barbet because it's very, very multicolored. All barbettes are actually multicolored. And this pair of barbettes were feeding on one of this soursop, kind of fruit. And here's the female. You can see that the female beak is still staying with the fruit. And you can see that feather detail. When you get feather detail like that, you know that your shot is really extremely sharp. And you can see this large number of bristles they have. Notice again that the male is much better colored than the female, and this is one of the issues in bird photography. The guys are usually better looking than the female, but we enjoy photographing both. Yeah. Okay. Here's another barbet, much smaller, in our garden again, just about the size of a sparrow, extremely beautiful, called a coppersmith barbet, always calling out, and we enjoy his company and her company. Yeah. They make holes in trees like woodpeckers, and here's this guy in our garden excavating a dead trunk and bringing out the picture. So in terms of showing my best shot, I actually got a lot of birds that I love very much. I'm not sure these are my best shots or not. I do travel a bit like Ban Hup, but mainly to try and document birds that I haven't seen and watch their behavior. This is the Narcissus flycatcher, seen in Japan, in Hokkaido. Extremely beautiful, tiny bird, very flighty, not at all easy to image, but very beautifully shown here. This is a black and yellow broadbill. Looks almost like a clown, like a harlequin. And the broadbills have phenomenal beaks, iridescent beaks. And this chap was nesting and looking out for nesting material when I imaged this. Here's another broadbill, the black and yellow. That was this earlier one was black and yellow. This is a black and red. Sorry, I put the wrong name there. Black and red broadbill. And they make this kind of untidy nest, which gives you a clue that that's where they're going to be. This is one of our personal favorites. It's a chestnut bee eater. They catch bees. We have these birds coming to our garden twice a day because we have lots of wildlife in our garden and bees as well. And they make nests in holes in ground. And it's quite fun to watch them document what food they will bring. And here's a nesting colony. You can see the two birds up there, but the number of holes tells you lots of birds are nesting here. But one of the issues with photography is using your images. And I use my images a lot to share what's happening. And here, for example, is a composite image of a number of feeding items brought to young. And I wrote a small paper about their feeding behavior, watching many events. These are sunbirds. Sunbirds are very much like our hummingbirds that you see from the Americas, but these guys can't flutter so well. This is the ruby-cheeked. And what you want quite often in bird photography is the action shot when the bird is feeding their young. Here's another sunbird you see in Cameron's, the black-throated sunbird. Again, the nice bouquet background here, which makes the image beautiful. A crimson sunbird, which we have in our neighborhood. And as I said, the females are not very well colored, but all birds actually do phenomenal things. Here's an olive-back sunbird bathing in our garden. They love it when my wife waters the garden. They all come and actually bathe on the leaves. This is a cinnamon tree leaf that they're bathing on. And they build this very untidy nest. And sometimes they can build a nest which is quite unusual. This one on the right is built on a light bulb in someone's home. These are Jawa sparrows. They actually immigrants. People have been using them as cage birds, but they've escaped. And in Ipoh, they form colonies in our limestone caves, and sometimes can be very beautiful in some of the holes they have. Occasionally looking like an angry bird as well. We have lots of woodpeckers that visit us, and very beautiful to image. This is the banded woodpecker, and here's the banded woodpecker. Two males fighting over a female for courtship. Makes interesting image. And here's a common flameback, the female on the left and the male on the right, again, birds that are seen in our garden. Here's a tiny woodpecker, smaller than a sparrow, very difficult to see, and I've been trying to observe this bird and understand his and her behavior. Here's a hooded pitta. We have a lot of migratory birds coming to Malaysia. This pitta comes from Bhutan and Nepal and comes in from May to September, from September to May, and then returns again. Birds can also be very interested in you, like children, as Ban Hup showed. And this is a chestnut bat from Mahaka, trying to understand what I was doing. And here's the buffyfish owl also looking hard at me. And birds can do very amazing things. They can defy gravity. And they have great adaptations. Here's a gray-breasted sunbird. You can see the quality of image telling you how close I am to it. And that great beak of all the spider hunters is used to go and explore flowers. Here's the streak spider hunter from Cameron's, exploring the nectar from flowers. Okay. Birds in flight pose a special challenge, and you need to actually change all your settings and how you image. You need to pull back your lens to a much smaller range. Usually a telephoto lens is easier to do that, and tracking them is not an easy thing. Here's a red-headed vulture, and here's a Brahmini kite, which is quite common if you go to any of the coastal places in Malaysia. I also do children, and I like to take a long lens to capture them. Of course, getting permission after I've taken the image and deleting it if they don't want it. But I also do things like this, which are, putting children together in a collage. This is from Sikkim. I also do some portrait of adults, but I leave that largely to Ban Hup. And I occasionally do things like Ban Hup of scenes when they come across which are beautiful. I do a lot of animals, and here's a silver lutang, which is a leaf monkey, and the young is always orange colored to let the whole tribe know that it's a baby and to be cared for. Very, very beautiful creatures. And here's one of my wife's personal favorite, Izo red fox, which is in Hokkaido. And these two foxes were mating, and they allowed me to watch at not too far distance. And the long lens allows us to watch this behavior without interrupting them too much. A huge squirrel, which is about the dog size in our jungle. And I do, as I said, macro photography. And even the common dragonfly can be quite fascinating with macro. A 5mm spider, some of our magnificent spiny spiders in our jungle, and spiders that make all sorts of phenomenal webs. Here's a frog hopper from our garden. This is only about 4 or 5mm. And this is a baby forming this bubbly thing on the body, which is created from sap for protection. I also do a couple of bit of nature. For example, this is a sunrise. This is taken from 6 images and merged together in the computer to try and give you this huge panoramic view of a sunrise. This is in Kampa. And of course, occasionally do the occasional selfie of yourself. The best sunsets in the world are in Kota Kinabalu. I must say that they're spectacular places to sunset. On the mountains in Nepal, and some astrophotography, greater and lesser Magadan cloud there with the Milky Way shown. I want to say something about bird photography. People are looking for the spectacular. I'm looking for the ordinary, which can be quite unusual. A simple sparrow collecting nesting material, a bird in your garden suddenly feeding a baby and catching the moment very early in the morning, high ISO, but still can get a decent image. And for example, this picture doesn't look like very much, but I wrote a whole article on this. I saw this egret with a boatman, and then I found 1 or 2 more. And then I went and searched on the web, and people have talked about it since the 1800s of egrets with fishermen. And what happens is this egret doesn't eat any fish. He only eats the fish the fisherman gives him. There's a fish lying in the boat there, but he didn't touch it. He waits for the fisherman to give him the fish that the fisherman doesn't want, and they have a symbiotic relationship together. So I want to say that you can develop good relationships with birds. Here's the long-tailed nightjar in our garden for 2 years. He's been here for so long that we actually created a platform for him to rest. And he has enjoyed our company as much as we have enjoyed him. Stop there. Thank you.
Wow. Wow.
Interesting, Amar.
I have to just say wow again. Let me try to change the okay. For those who don't know, Amar has a magical garden. It's no ordinary garden. It's a magical garden where we got these fantastic exotic birds will visit. The only gardens in my backyard seem to be crows, the Javanese, the magpies, and the occasional maybe doves and bulbuls. And these are birds which I learned from Amar. Otherwise, I would never notice what they were.
But you got to make it. You got to make it wild, Ellen. If the garden is wild, then birds tend to come.
My garden is cemented over.
Okay,
so
right.
I don't think we'll get anything coming. Yeah, there's no junk. But I think where your location is very important. I think
yes, agree
for the subject. And I think like Ban Hup, he really takes the trouble to visit all these I'm envious of his visits and his travels, but he gets his great scenery, portraits, and all that. Okay, so. Maybe we'll take a different tack, and for those of us starting out in photography, maybe Ban Hup, you can share some tips for beginners, both in terms of technique and also in terms of equipment. And say if you want to start off, what camera would you advise? Is our phone camera good enough? And what tips do you have for taking shots of portraits and people in general?
Okay. Is it sharing already?
I'll add to the stream. Okay. Is it? I think it's enough if you just put a side by side on that screen. I don't think it needs to be very big. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So you can see it, huh?
Yep.
All right. Yep. Now this tip I share all the time. Very, very important. Remember the word table. TABLE. TA stands for target. Select your target. You see, when I travel, I meet with many people. Sometimes I meet a group of children. I don't take photographs of everyone. I look at the children, see who has got a very interesting character, interesting face, and I will concentrate on him or her. After I've selected my target, I will assess the background. That's for B. If the background is very distracting, I wouldn't bother taking the photograph. I will look for a better background, either change my perspective or take the child to my subject to the background to take the photograph. And lastly, LE stands for lighting environment. That is very important. After all, photography is the capture of light. With no good light, you can't take nice photos actually. So when you have these three elements together, you have, to me, is a formula for a potentially good shot. Okay, you still need to have an eye for photography. Otherwise, you just take like any snapshots. Okay, TABLE, remember that. And the second tip that I would like to share with you is to attend workshops. This is my second tip. That's where you see other people's work, see how people take photographs. I attended lots and lots of workshops, lots of model shoots. That's where I learned how to pose, how to look at light, learn how to what you call frame the photograph. Right? And last but not least, practice. Practice, just like medicine, you know, practice makes perfect. You have to practice all the time. When I first started off, I practiced almost every minute of the day that I was free. I'll take photographs, I will attend workshop during weekends, I will practice Photoshop every minute of the day that I was free at the times to fine tune the way I edit my photos to the way that I like to see a photograph. So much so that now I look at the scene, I know what I'm going to get. That helps a lot. Okay, so this is the 3 tips that I would share with you. I have plenty of tips, but I'll let Amar take over from here.
Okay, thanks, Ban Hup. Those are very useful for me as well. I've got 3 tips, and I'm not going to use any slides for this, but I want to say that the first tip is that equipment is not the key. I think when you're doing bird photography, the key is patience and friendship. So if you want to do nature or bird photography, I'm not talking about sunrise or sunsets or jungle, but about animals and birds and creatures that are shy. You've got to be patient and you've got to develop a friendship. You can't threaten them. So you got to respect wildlife. What's happened over the years, recently in the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a lot of bird photographers also develop bad habits. They try and pose the birds, they put feeding food there or play calls to attract them. Not necessarily the best thing, and they may be harmful as well. So most of us want to keep it natural and don't want to harm the birds. So cultivate a friendship. Now, in terms of buying your equipment for this, you do need a long lens. There's no run away from it. You know, you need a long lens. And, I would say buy at least something, which is buy a telephoto and buy a DSLR that can give you a reach of at least 150 to 500. 150 to 600 is also preferable. I would say also practice handheld. I don't do any tripod photography. I don't do any flash because birds don't like it. If you're handheld, you become very mobile. You can capture a lot of images, and that will hold you well. So buy secondhand. Don't buy firsthand. These things are expensive. You know, you can probably invest about 2,000 to 3,000 into secondhand and get a reasonably decent gear to start you out with, and move from there. The second thing is, I think about what you're seeing, read about it. I've got tons of bird books at home, but there are lots of online resources as well. If you don't read and learn about the bird, then you don't appreciate what you're seeing. The idea is not to get the best shot. I'm different from Ban Hup in that sense. My idea is to understand the bird, and I take a lot of images. If I go out for, let's say, 2-3 hours in jungle, I probably shoot between 200 to 400 images, minimum, sometimes even 500. Come back and probably trash half of them, but the ones that are remaining, some of them may not be the best images to look at, but are phenomenal in what they are describing about that bird that somebody else may not have seen. And often I write about it. So I think, you need to know why you're watching birds. I watch to appreciate their beauty, to share that beauty, but also for conservation and the science, to save these things. And so take a lot of images. When you go digital, you don't really mind too much. And most of all, enjoy what you're doing when you're out there. Don't go and, be careful about it. You don't have to compete with photography. There's always somebody going to have a better picture than you. So I don't bother about the best picture. I bother about, getting to know the bird well, taking a good shot. And the third tip is, I would say, always be curious. Keep looking. I'm looking all the time. I'm looking at wildflowers. I'm looking at nature. I'm looking at birds constantly when I'm walking, when I'm driving, when I'm, after driving, I'll be more careful. But in the jungle, you're looking at all the time. And you'll be surprised what people who are inquisitive, find. I have somebody following me on Twitter right now, and he's using a handphone and a binocs, and he's using that as his gear. And he will post pictures to me. The quality of the image is not good, but his enthusiasm is very large. And he is seeing a lot of interesting birds that other people have not seen. And of course, I'll post back a nice image of what the bird should look like in better lighting. But I think very soon he's going to buy high-end gear because he's shown so much interest. So equipment is not the key. It's building a relationship. Take a lot of images, learn about the bird and read about it. Don't worry about being perfect about it. And finally, always be observant, look around. Buy secondhand, don't buy firsthand. There are lots of good shops around that sell you secondhand. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic tips, guys. Yeah. Okay. What about our smartphone cameras? They're getting better and better, even with some zoom and things like that. Do you think there's an adage which says the best camera is the one you have with you at the moment you need to take the shot?
That's
Is
true.
that true?
Yeah, it's true. I think it depends on what you want to do with your photographs. If you just want to share in social media, I think a handphone is good enough. But you intend to print it, like sometimes I do, then you need a dedicated camera.
Yeah. I agree, Ban Hup. I think if I'm going to send an image to an international book that they ask for, it's got to be a DSLR high-end image. Often they even want a raw image, not even JPEG. So you got to have high-end camera for that. But a handphone is quite useful. Increasingly, people are doing something called digiscoping. Digiscoping is created by a guy from Ipoh, Lawrence Poe. And basically, you're taking a digital camera of some sort, putting into a viewfinder, like a binocs or a telescope or some other lens, and shooting it from there. And a lot of people use sort of a small telescope and some sort of digital camera to do it. I think with the new Huawei camera, you actually might get away with actually taking some birds which are nearer to you. But with bird photography, it's pretty difficult without a long lens to get some decent images. But I use a handphone camera all the time for sunrises, for portrait photography, and so on. And I'm quite pleased sometimes with the image that you can get. And it's handy and available.
Yeah. What about the software? The post-image processing. Maybe you guys can comment. Ban Hup, what do you use?
I only use Photoshop. I have not used any other software. So Photoshop is so powerful, so you can do almost anything with it.
How important is it to process your image? You find most of the time you have to do it, or is it?
Of course. You have to enhance certain thing, and if you have blown what you call clip shadows that's too dark, you got to bring back the details by brightening it.
Yeah.
The color, saturation, contrast, or the cropping. You have to do all this to enhance the photos.
I'd like to share one slide, Alan, about post-processing, and that might give some idea about it. And can you see this? Is it up, Alan?
I'll share.
Okay.
Yeah. You want me to blow it up or just leave it?
Yes, if you could, for this particular one, could you blow it up?
Yeah.
Okay, can see?
Yes.
Yeah, like Alan, Ban Hup, sorry, I use Photoshop quite a bit, but I've been moving to this thing called Affinity Photo. It's a powerful package, almost as good as Photoshop. I'm not happy with Photoshop because they keep increasing the fees, and you're tied to their license. Affinity doesn't have that, and the people are really good with their tutorials. So one alternative to Photoshop is Affinity Photo for people who are starting out. But I use DOBBS denoise artificial intelligence software quite a bit, which is another package. Notice the bird photograph, the original one is on the left, the processed one is on the right. Notice how the grainy images has become less grainy. When often you're taking images of birds, you might be shooting with a higher ISO, which brings some grain in, and some sort of software to denoise is quite useful. And I use Topaz Denoise is probably one of the best of the softwares to do this. I've stopped sharing, correct? Yes.
It's out. Yeah.
Yeah, so I recommend that. It's a one-off purchase, and they're very good with giving you updates, and their AI function is pretty good. You have to tweak it a little bit. Like Ban Hup, I still use Photoshop, but with birds, I do less enhancement. I just bring out the color to make it natural, and might try and brighten the bird a little bit if necessary. But we try not to change what we're seeing, But removing noise and making it sharper, definitely something that we have to do post-processing.
Sometimes you have no choice. For example, let me share this. Can you see it? Is it being shared already?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
You have this photo just now. You see, this photo was taken in the exposed this to the highlights. So this was the original. If you don't process it, you can't see the details, right? All these clip shadows. With Photoshop, you can do this.
Yep.
Oh, it's amazing different. Is there any freeware or for cheapskates like me, which you can recommend? There's a open source version of Photoshop for Windows and Linux, I think. Or do you think there's some online service which is worth using or not worth using? Because this software can be quite expensive. Yeah.
I have no idea. I have not used anything else. Amar, for you?
I have used a couple of online software that are free, but I must say, like Ban Hup, the Photoshop is head and shoulders above the rest, which is why I like Affinity Photo. The settings are almost the same as Photoshop, and it's a one-off purchase. Again, I understand the feeling. In the early days, I wasn't sure I was going to buy anything because you're not sure you're going to pursue. But at this point, when you got a lot of images and you're processing every day, you need a dedicated software, some sort. But there is GIMP, GIMP.
That's the one.
And that's open source, and lots of people use it. But I find the controls not intuitive, and that's a little bit of the problem with that.
Okay. Well, we've taken through quite a lot of your, run through all your favorite pictures, some tips, and so on. We have really taken 3/4 of an hour, so we'll probably run to a close now. But before we do so, can you share with the others where we can find your work? Amar, where can the viewers find your images?
Okay, let me share the screen again. And
I think you shared some links to me earlier.
yes, correct. That's good. If you're sharing that, then that's fine. That's an article I wrote for one blog on handheld bird photography. And I think that will give you some idea how to do it. It's some older gear that I was using. Currently, I'm using a very special, lovely lens produced by Nikon, which is a 500mm fixed lens. As I said earlier, I think people should use telephoto to start off. But this lens is very light for 500mm handheld. The first time I've ever had a 500mm handheld, they use some special PF lenses. Cost me a bomb and took me 1 year to get because there's an international demand that's really huge. So that article is a little bit on the older end, but still gives you the idea how to do handheld bird photography. There's another link I gave you.
Yes, I will. Again, these links I will post in the video description at the once we end.
By the way, the BESG group is where I write a lot of my blogs, a couple of 100 blogs there. And this is the Oriental Bird Images. I contribute my images to a lot of online database. It's the one I'm most dedicated to. I have more than 5,000 images there. They're lovely people. And so I post a lot of my images there. And again, as I said, looking for things that teach us about the birds rather than worrying about the best image. A lot of people contribute images of birds in our region to that area, and I recommend them strongly to you. Very, very good image master running this setup. Back to you, Alan.
Ban Hup, you shared some links on where people can find your work, so maybe you can tell us about this.
Okay, I'm actually an ex-photographer for Fuji, so I represent Fuji Malaysia. But I mainly share my work in Facebook. The list Fuji link, you can see some of my work at their website. I regularly share photos in Facebook. I used to
You
share.
better become Ban Hup's friend in Facebook. Look for Teh Ban Hup. Look for Teh Ban Hup. I think is that all you need to look for? There's no other Teh Ban
Just
Hup.
Facebook, Facebook/Ban Hup. That's it.
Okay.
Facebook.com.
Facebook.com/Ban Hup. All right. Okay. So
One I thought you did a
Fujifilm.
second link.
Yeah.
Sorry?
That's right. Okay.
Website. Yeah, I used to share my work at my own website, but now because I prefer social media, I got lots of fans there, so I normally share it on Facebook now.
Like most people, until Facebook goes into the down cycle, we don't know when that will happen. But I think it's still king of the hill.
Ban Hup, do you use Flickr? Or?
I used to use Flickr. I still have an account there.
Okay. I haven't used that, but I noticed a lot of people post good images on Flickr as well.
Yeah.
Flickr was owned by Yahoo, and they sold off quite a lot of their assets, I think, Yahoo. But Flickr, thankfully, is still standing. But a lot of people share on other things like Instagram, other than, which is also owned by Facebook, and they tweet their pictures and so on. But I think nothing better than a nice repository where people can go to. Yeah. Oh, okay. Amar has dropped out. But I think we will better come to a close. So thank you, everybody, for Amar's back.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Sorry. But anyway, I think
I clicked something. Yeah.
I think the stream has been great. It's been very steady, and I hope viewers who enjoyed it, and those who have not caught the live stream can catch the recorded version. We'll still be on our YouTube site. So don't forget, as the YouTubers say, don't forget to hit the subscribe, click the notification bell, and please follow us. We're just starting out, and we'd like to get more DOBBS interviewed. And it's not all about medicine. Medicine is too much. Just everything medicine just makes everything dull. We all have our hobbies, our interests, and so on. And also, photography is often discussed in our DOBBS Tech Talk Telegram group. So please head over to the bulletin board, and the join link for the Tech Talk Telegram group is there. You can ask Ban Hup and Amar there if you have any questions on photography. Or you can ask in social media like Ban Hup's website and so on. Okay, so guys, thank you very much for your time, and I learned a lot. I hope you all, and I enjoyed your wonderful pictures which you shared, your favorite ones. So wish everybody good night, have a good weekend. Okay, all right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to end the broadcast. Bye.
Okay.